Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here right at 9:15. The official meeting won't begin until 9:30, but I did want to run over some housekeeping items at 9:15 and kind of talk about what we're doing since this is a new program. This is our first webinar Wednesday. We are excited to be rolling out this new program designed for board members and CAMs. I'm Diane Michael with Beyond the Boardroom, and I'm so happy to be here with you. My partner, who is a CAM, and I decided to create this program as we understand the need and requirements for board members and CAMs to gain education on a variety of topics in an easy and engaging manner. I own a marketing company and I have created several dozen education events for board members and CAMs, and decided after the state of Florida created requirements for board members in education that there was a need for regular presentations in a format that was easy to digest and to share with others. Being that my partner, Lindsay Lombardi, is a CAM and she runs her own management company, together we have tailored the approach on topics and times for each month for the presentations. Right now, we will be holding Webinar Wednesday on the fourth Wednesday of the month. And as we gain more association allies, which is a term that we have coined for the vendors that board members and CAMs work with, we'll expand into other Wednesdays. But for right now, we will stick with the fourth Wednesday of each month. So please help us spread the word, tell your fellow board members and CAMs, and thank you so much for being here with us this morning. I'm going to read the board member requirements for HOAs and COAs. HOAs, directors elected or appointed after July 1st, 2024, must take an education course administered by the Florida Division of Business and Professional Regulation, or a division approved course, which will remain valid for 4 years before the director shall take another board certification course. Directors in HOAs with less than 2,500 parcels must complete at least 4 continuing education hours annually. Directors in HOAs with 2,500 parcels or more must complete 8 hours of continuing education annually. For community associations, directors elected or appointed after July 1st, 2024, must take an education course administered by the Florida Division of Business and Professional Regulation, or a division approved course, which must be at least 4 hours long and include instruction on milestone inspections, structural integrity reserve studies, elections, record keeping, financial literacy and transparency, levying of fines, and notice and meeting requirements. Existing board members will have until June 30th, 2025 to comply with this requirement. And that is from the Florida Division of Business and Professional Regulation. Wanted to just go over that before we kick off our agenda for today, which will begin right at 9:30. We will be providing CE courses in the near future, so keep reading those emails and stay tuned to receive those. As far as the agenda for today, we have 5 association allies presenting on seasonal topics. Each will be presenting for about 25 to 30 minutes with Q&A after. There will be a short 10-minute break in between each session. We ask that you send in your questions to me directly so that they can be asked at the end of each presentation. I'm just going to run through the agenda as well. This morning, our first presenter will be Expert Reserve Services, who again will begin right at 9:30. They will be presenting on SIRS and the TRS studies and RCVs. At 10:15, Insurance Office of America will be talking about the role of directors and officers and protecting board members from legal action. At 11 a.m., we have ProServe Pools, who will be discussing energy efficient and cost-effective pool operations and exploring energy saving equipment, automation, and sustainable pool management strategies. We will break from lunch from 11:30 to 1 and then we'll kick right back in at 1 with Terrascape, discussing mitigation erosion and protecting waterfront properties with landscaping solutions. And we will complete at 1:45 with AK certified roofing, discussing tile roof maintenance, repair, and replacement considerations. So we have a packed agenda today, but in short bite-sized pieces. So if you have any friends that you want to invite, please send them the link to register. This is a webinar, so you don't have to log in and log off. You can just keep this on and then mute yourself, keep yourself off screen and watch this at your leisure. And again, if you have any questions during any of the presentations, please feel free to contact me. And again, thank you so much for being here this morning. Okay, good morning, everyone. It is 9:30 and we always start right on time. Thank you so much for being here for our first webinar Wednesday. We are thrilled to provide a packed agenda for you today. I have put into the chat the agenda for today. So please go ahead and reference that so that you can see who will be presenting when. Each of our presenters is going to be speaking for 25 to 30 minutes with questions and answers after. So if you would please go ahead and send me in chat any questions that you have so that I can present them to the presenter at the end of their presentation. And without further ado, we'll go ahead and kick this off. It's my pleasure to introduce Anastasia Kolodzik. Anastasia oversees all reserve study inspections at Expert Reserve Services, also processing and reports. Anastasia is meticulous about working closely with her clients, creating a reserve study that is not only functional, but also one that can work into budgets. She has achieved the coveted PRA, the Professional Reserve Analyst designation from the Association of Reserve Analysts. She is a certified reserve studies specialist, an RSS, a Florida Licensed Community Association manager, a CAMP, and a Florida State certified continuing education provider. She's got a lot of letters after her name, and I personally and professionally have worked with Anastasia and her team at Expert Reserve Services and just have nothing but wonderful things to say about them. Welcome this morning, Anastasia.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining Webinar Wednesday. This morning, we're going to dive into the exciting world of structural integrity reserve studies, traditional reserve studies, and replacement cost valuations. Later in the 30 minutes we have allotted, you will meet my husband, Dave Kolodzik, who is the other half of the business, and he is the one that is responsible for the replacement cost valuations. So without further ado, we shall start with structural integrity reserve studies. First question is, who needs them, what qualifies, and how is it determined? In 2022, the SB 4D was passed after the disaster in South Florida. It designated that 3 stories or higher, and that is 3 residential stories or higher. There has been a lot of things, a lot of conversations about what qualifies as 3 stories, and it's still a little bit cloudy, just so everyone is aware. It is designated as 3 residential stories. However, there are properties that we have experienced that have a first floor garage. Is that considered a story? Sometimes it is, and sometimes it is not. If you're in a situation like that, the best advice that we can give is to check with your local building authority and see if it's classified as a 2 or 3 story building. That will help designate whether or not you need a SIRS. The other thing is, in operation on or before July 1st, 2022. So if your building is in operation on June 1st, 2022, even though it's practically brand new, you still need a SIRS under this requirement. Any association under 718 on or before July 1st, 2022 is required to have a SIRS. The requirements of the state: reporting, implementing, and budgeting. Once you have your SIRS completed, it must be reported to DBPR. DBPR has a website, and we can give you that information. You email into this website, and they send you a code. They send you a form to fill out, and then you have to register your SIRS. This has to be done by either the board or the manager. Implementing your SIRS. The SIRS requirements is you must have your structural integrity reserves fully funded. Now, this is not 100% funded. Fully funded means that you have the funds that you need when you need them. So it is on an amortized schedule. It does not mean that if you have a $200,000 roof, by the end of 25, you have to have $200,000 for that roof. It means it is based on the useful and remaining life of that component. So it does not mean that you have to have the entire 100% of the replacement value in the bank for that roof that quickly. It's spread out over time. Implementing the SIRS. As of now, the dates may change of when your fully funding should start. And we'll talk about that in just a few minutes with the new bills that are being argued and presented right now. Implementing the SIRS means that you must put this into your budget for the next year. And at the end of that year, you must be fully funded. So you should start at the deadline, which was and is right now, before anything else is passed, 12/31 of 24. So that means in 1/1 of 25, you should have begun to fully fund your SIRS. And then we get into a little bit of budgeting. The budgeting aspect of it is everyone has in the past had one reserve account. The way that it sits now, your SIRS and your traditional funds cannot be commingled. Therefore, you need two complete different accounts for your reserves, one structural, one non-structural. If you're using a pooled method, then you can move funds from one line to the other within that particular report, but you cannot move funds from SIRS to traditional or traditional to SIRS anymore. They have to be kept separately. What is the list that's included? Your roof. This is for SIRS only. It has a specific component schedule. Your roof, paint and waterproofing, supporting structures and concrete. And let me stop there just for a moment. Many questions have arisen about the supporting structures and concrete. This boils down to building restoration. Building restoration normally is done every other paint cycle. Sometimes it's further out and sometimes it's sooner, depending on the condition of the building, historical values, location, and the products that were used. If you use a 7-year paint, then you're going to be painting every 14 to 15 years. So your building restoration would be every 14 to 15 years. If you're using a 10-year paint, it would be every 20 years. Historical values on the building restoration allowance is sometimes a topic of discussion, simply because in the past, associations were not doing restoration on that schedule. Now it is laid out for them to do it on that schedule. Therefore, the price can decrease, or the first few times, depending on when the last time they had a restoration done, the price can increase and then decrease once things level out. Plumbing, electrical, fire, windows and doors. Plumbing, electrical, and fire are mandated to be in your structural integrity reserve study. Those are usually allowances unless you have historical values that could be implemented in the reports. Most of the time, associations used operational funds for repairs and replacements on those 3 items. Now it has changed over to your structural integrity reserve study. So those items can be taken out of operations and put in your SIRS. Windows and doors, another hot topic of conversation. Windows and doors are only association responsibility for the SIRS. If your windows and doors in your units are a unit owner responsibility, then they do not go in the SIRS. If they are association responsibility, and especially sliders, if they're association responsibility, they need to go in your structural integrity reserve study and be reserved for. Any common windows and doors, some associations, mainly towers, have what we call window walls, which is all those windows in the front or the back of the building. That's just a wall of windows. Those are under your structural integrity reserve study. The exterior doors are in your structural integrity reserve study, and any utility doors are in the structural integrity reserve study. Deadlines and upcoming changes from the legislation in the Senate and the House now. So we have 2 bills up right now, SB 1792 and HB 913, which are very, very similar. Now, one thing I want to say, I'm not an attorney and I am not a lobbyist, but these are the high points of what the changes are that are proposed. Nothing will change until the governor signs it, of course. One of the main things that's going to change is they are looking to extend, in 1792, they are looking to extend the deadline for the SIRS to the end of this year, which we are almost halfway through this year. So by the time, if this passes, it will be July. You will have 6 months if you haven't performed your structural integrity reserve study. The last information we got, 1/3 of the associations that were required in the state of Florida to have a SIRS have done them. That means 2/3 are still trying to make up their mind. One of the questions that has come up is, if I'm in the middle of restoration, can I wait to do my structural integrity reserve study? If these bills pass, then 1792 does have a provision that you can extend this for 2 more years while you are under construction. However, it has not passed yet, and I can't stress that enough. If you go on the Senate website, you can read the entire bill and see where all of this is coming from. Now, let's go on to traditional reserve studies. Traditional reserve studies are the reserve studies that we did before SIRS, minus the SIRS components. So, and these reports work hand in hand. If you have pool, if you have fences, if you have asphalt, if you have elevators, if you have any sort of large equipment like generators, domestic water pumps, all of those items will go on your traditional reserve study. This is the other side. This is the other account we were talking about earlier. You have a structural integrity account, and then you have a traditional account. That keeps your paper trail clean. So when DBPR does come knocking at your door, everything is clean, and you'll be able to show them that you are funding for your SIRS. The traditional reserve study is not mandated at this point. However, it is considered good business to do both, so you have a complete snapshot, a complete projection of your budget for the next year. Who needs them? What qualifies, and how is it determined? Condominiums that are 2 stories and below, homeowners associations, can benefit from a traditional reserve study, especially ones that have high amenities, have lots of amenities. Homeowners associations, even though they're single family homes, they still have, if they're gated, they have streets, they have gates, they have a guardhouse, they have pools, they have tennis courts, basketball courts, pickleball courts, shuffleboard courts. There's landscaping. There's a list that goes on, depending on the size of the property. And again, it works in conjunction with the SIRS. If you are a condo under SIRS, even though you have your structural integrity reserve study, you should have your traditional reserve study in order to complete the process and complete your budgeting. Of course, what is included, all the components the association is responsible for. So any and everything that that association is responsible for should be on your traditional and your SIRS. Not duplicated, but your traditional reserve study should have everything that the association is responsible for in order to provide responsibility and transparency with your unit owners. A lot of associations will not reserve for things that are under $10,000. You can't, that is an option. You can or cannot do that. However, when you get into year over year inflation and construction costs, it could be right on the cusp. And then in 3 years, it could go over that $10,000 mark. Best practices, frequency, and implementing. Your frequency for reserve studies, for traditional reserve studies, has always been every 3 years. That is shifting a bit. Excuse me. Most associations are doing annual updates, especially with our inflation and our economy in the situation that it has been the last few years. When we were going through COVID, of course, the economy went absolutely crazy and the inflation increased exponentially. So associations were doing reserve studies on an annual basis. When the SIRS got implemented, the statute says every 10 years. Anyone with any sort of budgeting background knows that if you budget for something right now and you don't look at it again for 10 years, excuse me, then you're going to be way off the mark. So we suggest that having your SIRS done and then annually updating it at least the first 5 years every year will get your association, your unit owners acclimated to this new process, this new blueprint that everyone is trying to figure. Now I'm going to turn this over to my husband, Dave, and he is going to talk about replacement cost valuations.
Good morning. We're talking about replacement cost valuations, or what used to be called insurance appraisals. Who needs them? Under statute 718, it's every condominium association, or at least residential condominium association of Florida. It doesn't matter what size it is. We do RCVs, replacement cost valuations, for associations as small as 2 units and as large as literally thousands. It's the only exemption would be is if you have a 100% commercial condominium association, that is now excluded. Previously, those also had to be done. However, if that association only has 1 residential unit in it, it still would have to have the replacement cost valuation done. The replacement cost valuation became a statute in 2007 after the horrendous hurricane seasons of 2004, 2005. The legislators saw that the majority of the condominium associations in Florida were horribly underinsured. And for that reason, they made a requirement, a legal requirement to have these done. We get questions all the time as to, well, I don't think we need to have this done because our insurance company makes sure that we're properly covered. That's not true. The every insurance policy has a provision, and it's called a assured value clause that says that you, as the insured, the association in this case, you guarantee the insurance company that you're insuring to full value. And if you're not insured to full value, then they can actually prorate your claim, or actually, in some cases, completely disavow it because you're breach of contract with it. So it's very important to have this done for the associations. It's fiduciary responsibility of the board to make sure that that things are properly insured and covered. What does it do? It gives replacement of buildings and insurable site additions in the event of a disaster. So a lot of people also say that, well, the building is not going to be completely destroyed, so why do we have to insure it to full value? Well, because that's how insurance policies are written. You have to insure to full value. It's just the nature of the beast. What we run into a lot is that the people don't take into consideration all of their site additions. We had this issue in the Daytona Beach area several years ago during a hurricane. All of the carports were destroyed in this particular association that was not on the RCV, and it was not covered. And so they had literally over $500,000 worth of damage, which was not on the policy, and it was not repaired. So the condominium association had to come out of pocket for 100% of the replacement of those carports. It can get very pricey. So it's important to have someone who is well versed in replacement cost valuations of the property to make sure everything is going to be itemized on the report. That is why the requirements of the statute says it has to be done every 36 months, every 3 years. There are some companies that do the replacement cost valuations that will not come out every 3 years. They'll just arbitrarily do it without actually coming on property. Huge mistake. It's unbelievable how many things can change in an average association in 3 years. Things can be added, things can be subtracted. A new set of eyes just to make sure that everything is correctly on the report and everything is properly covered. The way that prices are going up, also construction prices in Florida have gotten crazy. I've been doing this since the 1990s, and traditionally we experienced construction cost increases of between 4 to 5% in Florida. Over the last several years, because of COVID and several other things, that has increased exponentially. To give you a background, in 2021, the cost of construction in Florida went up 14.2%. 2022 is 9.7%, 2023, 9.2%. And in 2024, last year, it went up 7.2%. So it's starting to get more in line with tradition, the traditional 4 to 5%, but it's certainly not there. So having these done on a regular basis is important. That being said, the statute calls for every 36 months. Some of the insurance carriers are requiring it now annually to have these done to make sure that the associations are properly covered. And we strive to let the associations know that the boards know that they even if the carrier is not required annually, we suggest that. Because the last thing you need to be is 2.5 years after your RCV and have a major disaster and find that you're 20% undercovered, underinsured, and having to try to do repairs at that point. We had this exact issue a couple of years ago down in Fort Myers. We had associations that we do business with that had not had their RCVs done in over 2 years, and they were finding that they were almost 20% undercovered, underinsured, because the carrier did not do a regular 4 or 5% increase per year, at least to cover the shortfalls. And they're quite honestly, they're still trying to come up with money to rebuild with loans and grant money, government money. They're still not able to live in their buildings. So it's important to make sure that this is done on a regular basis. 36 months is the statute. 1 year every 12 months is a suggestion. Another thing is, people to understand that as a statute, as a law, because it is a law, it's 718 111.11A is the actual statute, that if an association decides not to have this done, that they are in violation of state law. And that carries a $5,000 per incident fine, in addition to still having to have the RCV done. So it's having the replacement cost valuation done is it's fiduciary responsibility. It's the law. If you don't do it properly, it'll cost you money, if either for a major insurance claim and or fines by the state. What's included? All the structures on the property. Again, for condominiums, that it could be a clubhouse, it could be multiple condominium buildings. It includes the side additions we talked about. This could be pools, seawalls, carports, shuffleboard courts, anything that is actually insurable that the insurance carrier could cover on it. Now, we talked about condominiums under 718, but what about homeowner associations that are registered under 720? Those are also important. And a lot of the carriers, although it's not required by statute, a lot of the carriers require these to be done on a regular basis, just as condominiums are. Think about it. You have a clubhouse, you have tennis courts, you have pools, you have mailboxes. We do associations all the time that have large associations. They got 5 or 6 large stands of mailboxes scattered across the property. Some people think that, well, that's the post office's responsibility, but 99% of the time, those are not owned by the post office. Those are owned by the association. They get very expensive. So it's also important for the HOAs to have these done as much, or sometimes even more importantly, than the condominiums, even though it is not a statute. If you have any questions regarding what is included in the replacement cost valuations, or have any questions at all, please feel free to give us a call, send us an email. We're always happy to answer for you. Thank you.
Okay, we just have a few minutes left. Does anybody have any questions for the team and Expert Reserve Services? I'm going to put in the chat to everyone the contact information for them so that you can cut and paste that and put that into your own notes to schedule a consultation or to contact them directly, as well as adding their link to their website for more information. And we do have a question. Mailboxes, is that included?
Included in,
It just asks mailboxes.
mailboxes are included in traditional reserve studies and in replacement cost valuations. I do want to say one final thing. If you would like to, you can go to our website, scroll down to the bottom of the homepage, excuse me, and you can download our free book on structural and traditional reserve studies. It is a free download. Share it, read it, print it, whatever. But it has a lot of information on general questions and how it all works.
I love that. Thank you, Anastasia. Thank you, Dave. Okay, everyone, we'll take a break if there are no other questions. And the next presentation will begin at 10:15 with Insurance Office of America discussing directors and officers.